For those of you who are just tuning in the studio with me on this day, we have Jeff Lorber, pianist extraordinaire, does great things. I also took a look at your studio as well.
Oh, okay.
Spying on you. Oh, they're pretty big. You have a lot of stuff you're working with.
Well, nowadays you don't need it as big of a studio, with the software and everything. But I built my studio basically in the 80s, I guess, and 89 is when I moved that board. I have like sort of a great big solid state Logic board. I mean, people don't really use those so much anymore. But I was going to sell it, in fact, recently. I had a nice offer for it, but then I sort of looked, like I was kind of checking out what else I could put in there, and I decided that I was better off just keeping what I had. But yeah, it's a little bit of an old-fashioned studio in that it's got a lot of old equipment, and it's kind of big, maybe bigger than what you really need nowadays. But we get a really good sound there. I think it's about the best studio that I've ever been in as far as keyboards are concerned, because I got a lot of really nice keyboards that I use in there, especially a lot of Moog synthesizers and some of those analog sounds. I think that still sound really good.
I was going to ask you, how does that blend and work with the modern technology and the way music is produced now?
Well, the biggest difference in modern technology is that we don't record on tape anymore. We used to have to record on tape, and you could only get 24 tracks on a reel. And to be honest with you, those tapes were heavy. I'd be always like lifting up the tapes back and forth to the shelves, and after a while, like my wrist would get sore. So I don't miss that at all.
So you have ever have one of those times when you forgot to cue up the music and you found the whole tape on the floor or something like that?
Well, things like that have happened. I can't deny that we've had some interesting experiences with tape. But yeah, so the big difference is, nowadays you have an undo button. Back in the days of tape, you didn't have an undo button. You had to just record, and that was it. So I'm kind of glad that I grew up in that era, because that taught you a certain way of working where you had to kind of make decisions as you go, and I still do that. I don't like keep all my options open. I try to just make decisions as I go, like I used to when I was working on tape. But I really do appreciate the fact of sort of having unlimited tracks to work with and having, being able to just kind of work on things until you get it right.
A lot of your music is getting sampled, still gets sampled.
I have a song called Rain Dance that I recorded in the 80s, and that's been, it's very well known because of Notorious Big and Little Kim. They had a big hit with it called Crush on You, and more recently on Ariana Grande's debut album, there's a song with Ariana Grande and Big Sean, I think the guy's name is.
I saw him recently. UNCF, yes.
And they had a song called Right There, and that used the Rain Dance sample also, and also it was on Erykah Badu, her album that had the Tyrone, the live performance of that. So she sort of jams over my Rain Dance song on that album too.
All right. And what are you listening to these days?
One of my all-time favorite records is some of the stuff from the 60s from Miles Davis, like Miles Smiles, Fillets, The Kilimanjaro, the ESP album. Like those records, like when it comes to chill out music, that's my favorite chill out music. I can just put those on and just relax, and it always sounds good to me. I never ever get tired of those records. So those are some of my favorites.
We have been enjoying your music for a long time. Is there any particular artist that you would love to work with that you haven't worked with yet?
Well, when it comes to instrumental music, I've been very fortunate. I've worked with most of the well-known instrumental artists one way or another, and that's really been fun, because when I get in the studio as a producer, I'm just sort of a fan. I just love to work with talented people, and living in LA, there's a lot of these people that live in LA, and there's great session musicians too, and so that. It might not be the best city in terms of the traffic and somewhat, the air quality and a few other things, but in terms of talent, there's some great talent in LA. So I've worked with, I think, most of the instrumental artists that are out there. I haven't worked with a lot of vocal artists,
Okay.
So maybe Sting.
You got to change that.
Sting and Sade and some of the great vocal artists of our time. I'd love to have a chance to work with them. I mean, in the late '80s and early '90s, I was doing a lot more session work of doing like arranging and remixes too for R&B and pop music. So back then I was working a lot more on those kind of records. I worked with New Edition. I even worked with U2 on one of their albums. And Renee and Angela, I worked with them quite a bit. They were really inspirational to me. I really enjoyed what they were doing back in the day.